Judge today and throughout this week is Ben Williamson of Flintstone, Maryland. He's an assistant teaching professor and livestock judging team coach for Penn State University. Ben was raised on a diversified farming operation in Ohio comprised of grain, cattle, and hogs. He teaches production courses and serves as an advisor for the Block and Bridle and Collegiate Cattle Ambassadors Club. Additionally, he serves in several roles for Penn State Extension, including providing leadership for the Pennsylvania Performance Bull Test, the PA Premier Bred Heifer Program, the Pennsylvania Farm Show, and youth livestock programs. Ben has judged various species across the United States from local, state, and regional levels, and with his family, Ben manages a cow-calf operation and is now venturing into marketing local produce. With that, folks, let's go ahead and put our hands together for our judge, Ben Williamson.
There you go. All right, we're going to start with Class 1. And Class 1 is Alyssa Alger, Zach Jensen, Brigham Rowley, Maddie Winward, Sable Kelsey, Wayland Porritt, Riley Topham, Piper Stokes, Crimson Reese, and Olivia Hess. And we'd like to give a special thanks to Meadow Thornley for helping out Olivia Hess today. And if we can get Class 2 to start lining up, that would be great.
We would also like to thank Mallory Worthington with Westworth Photography for being here today. She is going to be photographing our market goat show, and she will have photos available for purchase of your children and your kids, and she's fantastic, so we'd love to give her a round of applause and thank her for being here today. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm ecstatic to be here. This is every summer I get a couple events that I'm just thrilled to go through. I've never been in this part of the world. The invitation is extremely humbling, and I'm excited to work through the week with this and go through all the livestock and more specifically work with all your kids. A couple comments before I start into class one of our goats. I just want to set the stage a little bit. Right or wrong, you're with me for the week. And when we start talking about showing the ruminant species, the led livestock in here, I just want to send up a couple things because I'm going to talk about a little bit of showmanship and things I anticipate this week on things that I want to see. One, we're going to rechange on this class two how we come in. The big thing is I want to talk about is where you line up in regards to the rail. You're supposed to go in, you're supposed to face the crowd, let me get a rear and chest view. But I want to ask a question. If you were me and trying to work when trying to show this livestock, and have the livestock all through that rail and up there, I'm going up front, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to see chests, I'm trying to see forearms, I'm trying to see bodies, right? I'm trying to evaluate your livestock. Can I do that when you're on top of the rail? Yes or no? It's not a rhetorical question. No, I can't. If I'm right here, I can't see anything, right? So we got to think about that as showmen in terms of what we're trying to accomplish, what we're trying to set this tone for. The second thing is this isn't as much in this species or sheep, but especially the cattle. If something goes wrong and you need to replace or move the livestock or resituate yourself, if you're all the way up on top of the rail, do you have room to do it? No, you don't. Especially when you start thinking about hauling those cattle around. You're not hauling skid loaders, you're driving 18-wheelers. You got to have room to turn and work. So the reason I'm saying this in class one, right out of the gate, is I want you guys to think about how you're setting things up and how you're presenting yourself. Be a contender, but in order to be a contender, you got to prepare and think things through, okay? My general rule of thumb in a longer, narrower ring like this is I like to be about 25% off where I set off the front stage. So about 25% of the width of what that ring is, I'm going to set their front feet, and that's where we're going to start. So just go into that. As we get into class 1, I think we got a really, really good one to start, and there was no question where we're going to begin as soon as this one hit the gate. This is a good-looking one. It's actually upstanding in his chest, square in its forearm, round rib, and you set that one in motion. He's the most athletic in here. Hard touch, good spread, just a nice one to begin. As we start separating from there down, I think we end up having conversation, a more conventional look with real production shape and muscularity. This one isn't as highly presented. This is a little rounder and coarser on both ends. You get right up on top of that one. That one actually sits big in terms of its rack and has a ton of turn over its top down the lower part of its leg. That's a productive one, just isn't as aesthetic or highly presented, and that's why it goes 2. As we work down the ring, that turns into more of a conversation. This one's actually probably a little better heighted, a little better touch, certainly spreads with a more like the hind saddle. Rounder out of its shoulder, not as collected down its top line, not as heavy in terms of its skeleton. And then we get into this painted up weather. He's big pinned. He's actually got a ton of spread and shape down in the base of his leg. He's not as seamless in how he transitions into his forerib. He's rounder, he's frailer. That one's not as good heighted. This is the one that actually, when I came in, I liked quite a bit. That one's woofy. That one's got a stout feature and a stout skull, starting to get a little mature, and I say it's got a big spread and pin in him. When you get on top of him, he's not as good in terms of his hide. He's not as robust in terms of his center rib, and the spread down his back is starting to be just a little more white tissue and mature. That's why he stands where he goes. The next couple, as we go through, we have just a little bit differences in terms of not being as opened up and powerful. Nice, productive one to stand in a doe that's a really good underline, just needs more muscle. This one's extremely expressive and hard in terms of its touch. The problem is he doesn't have the same robust turn. He's a little coarser in how he's generally made, but I love the expression. Really one that's got just a little more hay belly in him. Functional and good, but just not as quite as powerful. And the last two are really, really sound athletic, really good looking in terms of extension. They just need to go out more in terms of just natural power and shape. Give them a big hand as we bring in class 2.
Coming back from class 1 is Piper Stokes and Sable Kelsey.
Schooler, let's get growing. Your partner for grain and feed, merchandising, marketing, storage, and logistics.
And Kinley Butler. If we can have class 3 start lining up.
like to thank our sponsors for our 2023 Market Goat Show. Doug and Susie Lish, Kate Schaefer, Claire Schaefer, Schaefer Goat Ranch, and Matt and Melissa Branch. Thank you so much.
Well, as we come to class 2, I think we just got a little bit of a different conversation in regards to maybe we don't have that standout, and we got to continue to work through them and find the one that has the most complete look, and that's going to be young ladies. I think this one fits together really, really nice in that category because you get this one from the side. This one's line's good. Its chest sits up in them. The angles are good. It has it sets in that into motion and stays some levelness and completeness. You get them behind this one, it's truly square. Is this the wolfiest, stoutiest one in this class? No. Is this one probably just on the edge of being a little looser heighted? Yeah. But this one fits together the best in terms of balance, proportions, and being compositionally in that good range and square and true in terms of its skeleton. That's why it wins, and that's what we need to value. In regards to just natural muscle, specifically in coming out of the top of his loin, you can see this one from the outside, how he works right up in the middle of his loin, and that gives him a huge turn and edge out over his loin edge specifically. As you step back and study him, he just doesn't come with the same lines. He wants to spin out just a little more to his toe. He works his top and drops his hip. Maybe gets just a little flatter footed. If we go ahead and just streamline that cat just a little bit more, that's probably okay, but he just comes a little coarser out of his shoulder. We just need to tie him together. A two that's got lots of muscle, he just got a little advantage in one spot. This one's a little plain in terms of its look. This one's too steep hip for me and down on its pasterns. Young lady, you've done a really good job of keeping that one compositionally correct. Goats are a different creature. They actually fatten from the inside out. As soon as you think that you go to the barn and if you notice this one day, you're just like, wow, where'd you come from? It's because all of a sudden they flipped the switch and they're starting to put it on the outside. He's raw, he's lean, he's hard, and I like that. And when you get on top of him, he's expressive with some turn to his edge and lower leg. He's just too plain, round out of his shoulder, steep out of his hip, soft in his pasterns. For those of you who like the 1 and 4, I dig it. That one's stout. Opened up, he's got a turn down his back. He's big pin. The problem is he's getting a little mature. He's deep chest. He's breaking behind his shoulder. We need to go ahead and elevate him in terms of his maturity pattern, his look, and not make him quite such of a bulldog and start making him just a little bit more cool looking in the process, and that terms in conversation. But young lady, that one's got a bunch of back in him. Really nice job in that regard. As we start steading down into the next couple, it turns into a similar conversation. I started to pull this one in different spots because I don't know exactly where he fits in regards to where I want. There's pieces that I'm in. That one you've done a good job in terms of feeding out the backside of his shoulder. You've done a good job working his leg. He's still too short and steep off one end. You've done a really good job presenting him. You're showing the fire out of him, and I appreciate that, but he's not naturally opened up enough. He needs to be open more round in his rib, open through his chest and pin, and then that doe takes a different conversation. But you've done a good job in terms of expression. And then on the flip side, I almost had you in a different spot too. This one's hard, but is also a little bit more rangy, right? He gets a little taller, steeper, softer pastern. Love the elevation of that one and length that one fits. We just need to go ahead and open this one up. Round ribbed one that's got just a little bit of hay belly in her. It's got some forearm, just need to tie it together better with more natural openness. That one's big legged, big arm. Really nice one in terms of just being productive, good underline, just done as good in terms of its general look and power. And as we get into the next couple, that turns into a similar conversation. We just need to go ahead and change your skeletons a little bit, but you've done a great job presenting them, great job getting them out here and showing them. You just need to make them a little more whoopy. Give them a big hand as they go back into the barn.
Coming back from Class 2, first place Anna Hales, second Colton Balls.
Rudd Funeral Home is there to serve your family in your time of need.
Let me be free.
Rock and Roll Construction Products, providing U-Cart concrete and landscaping products.
Madison Branch, Nathan Cephalo, Gus Munns, Kaylee Cephalo, Ella Thompson, Phoenix Harris. And if we can get the first and second places from Class 1 and 2 here in the show ring to come back for the division drive.
I think this conversation gets interesting, actually pretty deep in this, in regard to, we have some different balance points we're trying to come together. The thing is, as soon as this one hit the ring, there was never a question where I thought this one needed to be. Not that it's overwhelming, it's kind of similar as the last class in any particular way, but just complete quality livestock. That one's square chested, ties a neat shoulder in with some elevation, feeds with some shape and dimension and true squareness from behind, and then props up with a really good balance point and stout feature in the leg. Maybe a little more generic in terms of its head and skull shape, but that also kind of works to its advantage because they need to have some power in terms of the base of their jaw. They need to have some feature to kind of work with that. As we get into the next few, there's a little bit of a line drawing in terms of where you balance through this. Ultimately, this one's just a shot coarser, not as highly presented. This one's actually probably more expressive when you get right on behind its shoulder and bigger in terms of its hip, good in terms of its underline. That one doesn't tie as neat in terms of its chest floor. That one doesn't stay up and strong in terms of its pastern with quite the same silhouette, but I love the hardness and the compositionally correct one that just fits, just comes in a plainer look relative to the class winner. This is kind of the productive one in this particular lineup in our top tree. That one's an easy feeding, big bodied, soft flank one, good and bad. A little bit of softer hided, not quite as open up, and gets a little more plain in terms of his general look. He's got some shape coming behind his hip into his rack. He doesn't spread well enough and gets plainer and more common in terms of how he handles line leg, but he's functional. He's easy feeding, productive livestock with some stoutness and jaw. He's just starting to get a little more mature and past his prime. This is a hard one for me to figure out exactly where to go. If I do just sheerly from a carcass emphasis, that one probably slides into the 2 hole, maybe even pushes to win. The problem is this one doesn't lead well enough, and so I start having questions in regards to, is that one not one to cooperate, or is it that one's rear leg? And that's where I start really leaning to when you start watching that one and how it slopes out to his pins, gets more round and set to its hock and softer in its pasterns. That one doesn't have the same athletic stride. That one's big shaped, good muscled, compositionally correct. We just need to go ahead and balance the silhouette out and make that one more athletic between the ones that are very, very acceptable. But that piece, young man, really good job. Really good one that's actually good in terms of his upper hip shape, probably a little more athletic in terms of his rear leg, not near as shapely, not near as much turn down that one's back, not as good in terms of its general chest shape, but that one's really big pinned and really stout hip. We just need to go ahead and make that one a shot more expressive. Good one in terms of how you put that one just expressive, just gets a little coarser, steeper out of its hip. I think this is the one that actually just feels, no, that's not the right one I'm thinking about here in a second. Just a little more compressed off of both ends. We just need to go ahead and slide that one together with a little more smoothness, athleticism, and elevation to go together. Young man, you're going to get a big pause because I have to stop and look at this one because of you. You are absolutely doing the best job of getting this one stuck out here in this class, without question. You're not lifting that one. You're making it push. You're getting it level. You're keeping its head parallel, neck parallel to the shape. Because of that one gives me a really nice look from the side. You've worked with it at home, and you're making them push. We don't need to pick them up anymore and leave them that way. Not opposed to a pop. We need to get them to shove into you, and you're doing a great job. The problem is I keep getting a reminder when I step in behind this one needs to be stouter. It needs to be more opened up. But young man, you're doing a really good job presenting that one. I can't emphasize that enough. Yeah, give him a hand. Good job. Nice presented one, comes with a little hay belly. This is the one that gets just a little hollow in terms of its hydration. I want to go ahead and make that one have more turn and pop, and that kind of turns into the same conversation here with one that's a little more upstanding, probably just a little harder hided, just gets deeper and coarser about its shoulder, needs to be more opened up and rounder in its rib. And then we got 2 super productive ones that just get too plain in terms of their look and hydration as well. That one gets hollow and soft in terms of its top. This one's got leg shape, but needs to just be more elevated. But good job getting presented. Great job working with them. That one just stands there for you. I've never seen a goat do that very often.
Coming back from class 3, first place Madison Branch, second Ella Thompson.
For a genuinely warm welcome with small town friendly service, stop by the grill. They have slowly smoked ribs, wings, and briskets, along with homemade appetizers, unique sandwiches, pizzas, and burgers. The grill is a perfect location for family get-togethers or business lunches. They can even cater. For added fun, call the Bear River Bowling Center and reserve a lane. No matter what you like, the grill has something for everyone.
as we come to division, I've been told that I need to go ahead and rank them with all 6 for sale order later, so that we're going to do that. We're going to do it in traditional format and pick your 2 I like the best. I've already discussed them as individuals. I'm just going to give a quick highlight reel. The one out of our Class 1 division I said hit me hard and still does. That's a compositionally lean one that's athletic and neat-chested. That one works like an athlete when you set him in motion, kicking his head straight out top of his shoulder and still having some feature and power and still rounding its rib. More generic one that I still think is the most complete out of Class 2. You get him out here, that one still gets just a shot more generic in terms of how that one sets up from a silhouette. That's not the most opened up one. That's the one that of this trio is actually the flattest in terms of its body shape. We just need to go ahead and add some added feature and power into that one. It's a little more unique. No Thrills one coming out of the 3rd division as we just discussed, but we sit back to basics in that in terms of squareness of chest, roundness of rib, how that one sits out of the backside of his shoulder and set him in motion, and that one spreads. She maybe not overwhelm you, but you pull down that one's back and it still opens up like a meat animal should. With that being said, we're going to use Class 1 for division champion and 2.
The lightweight division champ is Piper Stokes. Lightweight division reserve goes to Madison Branch.
Tanglewood Studios has something for everyone, whether it's dance, cheer, color guard, or gymnastics. There's even recreational all-boys gymnastics along with Mamma Me classes. Family rates are available, so come join the fun.
If we can get Class 5 to start lining up.
We would like to thank some more of our sponsors for our Market Goat Show. Cody Roach, Katie Scott, Claudia Harmon Properties, Jeanette Skidmore, and Joe and Janice Summers. Please give them a round of applause, and we appreciate everything they've done to help make this show.
I think a nice set, and we started talking through this, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but trying to find that balance point. And honestly, this young man's, I'm not saying this is the most elevated one. I'm not saying this one is the most collected in terms of his top line. But when you set this one in motion is when it all comes together. That one's the athlete that naturally carries its head up. That one's big in terms of the touch, right behind its shoulder and how it spreads, stays true from behind. You don't do as good a job of getting that one as presented as a young lady right behind you. And because of that, it doesn't give off quite the same silhouette. But that one's round in terms of its body and kind of fits together. Now, with that being said, the 1 and 2 gives a better image from the side. That's a neater shouldered one that transitions better in terms of not only how he hooks up behind his shoulder but into his forerib. That one you do a really good job presenting as well. The problem is when you get right in top of him, I just don't think that one is as organically right as the one right in front of you. That one starts good and is good in terms of his tone but doesn't have the same upstanding shape and spread. That one doesn't sit quite as big in terms of the center part of its stifle either. Better in terms of how it streamlines, unquestionably, but just not quite as wolfy in terms of its general composition, correct, and shape. Now, if you like them stout and burly, 3, you're the man. And I made a comment to you earlier. When you get back off of that one, he ends up coming in a little bit of his knee. He's getting more mature necked. He's getting a little more mature in terms of his shoulder, and that's all still part of a consequence. Problem is when I turn him behind him and you get that one to kind of tense up, that one's stout. Big in terms of its rack. It's got a great edge and he's got a big pin, but part of that's part of his maturity. He wants to break behind his shoulder. He's not as good at his knee. I think his roundness of forward is more of a consequence of him being more mature and softer in terms of his general touch. That's why he stays third, but the pieces are really, really cool. Longer, more extended one, it comes into the 4 spot that I like in that category. Leaner in terms of its general touch and height as well. The problem is that one doesn't have enough muscle. That one gets more hollow in terms of how it sits out of the backside of its shoulder, and that smoothness is more of a consequence. It's leaner than the one in front of it, but it still needs to be better in terms of its height. This one fits more compositionally correct in tone. That one honestly doesn't fit in terms of proportions. Even though that one's expressive, that one gets more fragile, doesn't sit back as nice in its knee, gets steeper out of its shoulder and not quite as fluid when set in motion. We just need to kind of get that one together and then how it fits into the base of its chest. Another young lady, and you guys, I think showmanship's going to get interesting in a couple days. This dapple shouldered doe fits together in a nice look, has some natural pin width, has some muscle. The problem is it's kind of the outlier on terms of the ones that have some extras. That one fits together in terms of solid. Livestock just gets a little shorter, rounder out of its hip, not quite as compressed, but young lady, you've done a great job presenting that one too. Another one that kind of fits into a category that we talked about, 2 ahead, but just narrower in terms of a general pin, flatter in terms of rib, needs to be more fragile, needs to be square in terms of how he fits, and deeper in terms of his chest. When we get into the next couple, we end up having couple of goats that need to be more opened up. This is the trimmer one that's better in terms of his hide, more fluid in motion. Young man, super productive one in terms of his body. I can't emphasize that enough. We forget what body shape and flank means when they got to go live in the real world, and he does that. Problem is when I back off of him, his pin's too narrow. He's not as square and true in his shape because he starts getting shelfy up high. Another really more expressive one that kind of starts square, gets hollow in terms of his hydration, flatter in terms of rib and pushes his hawk, but man, really upstanding late maturing one with some growth. And then we got 2 that are extra fluid, good presented. Young ladies are doing a great job. They just get just a 2 plain to be able to push up the class.
Coming back from class 4, first place, Blakely Munns. Second, Brinley Rhodes.
Lincoln Financial specializes in estate, investment, and retirement planning, as well as business benefits. At Lincoln, they are totally impartial, comb through different options to create financial products a person needs. Lincoln Financial, big city service, small town care.
Wyatt Brown, Jancy Norris, Tegan Butler, Jandy Hawks, McCarty Larson, Braxton Richens, Jandy Cephalo, Lacey John, and Emery Hobbs. If we can get class 6 to start lining up.
Young man, I'm going to start with this, since you gave me a funny look, and when I asked you to walk, and I vowed that I was going to pick on every person that I saw in a show ring with a mullet. It must be the blonde hair and the mullet. There was never any question where I was going to start as soon as that one hit in. This is the kind of starting in that Utopia. That one's a really good-looking one that's still got stoutness at the base of its jaw with some youthfulness in how it sits into its throat line. Seamless in terms of how it sits into its shoulder and flat, but still got roundness in its rib, progressive width. And when you set this one in motion, it never wavers in terms of a genuine look and cocky attitude. That one just effortless when you go in, just that complete creature. Now, we've talked about power, and we love power, but we need it to come together in a cool feature. Where this one's neat, this one's really neat. I love this one in terms of the stoutness of jaw and just power in terms of its form and feature. That one's got a big square shape behind it. The problem is this one's starting to just get a little coarser and mature, not only in terms of its hull shape, but also in terms of the base of its shoulder, and when you set that one just a little rounder out of its hip. Now, with that being said, that's still a really good goat hip, but that one isn't as athletic and seamless in how it puts together, and I don't know if the muscle variation's really that different. It's more of a feature stoutness that's starting to get just a little more coarse and mature. This one actually fits together. Yeah, give her a hand. I like this one in terms of how it tacks up into the base of his chest and the sternum and comes more clean out of the backside of it into his forerib, and how it all comes together seamless. This one spreads when you get behind him with some shape and general square. Good look. The problem is this one's rear leg isn't good enough. He's too steep, he isn't athletic, and have the same reach and natural drive. You change that in that one, I can make a flip into 3. That's why you took about 4 steps, and I knew what was going to happen in that regard. This one's actually big in terms of the power and how it fits. This one's got a huge rack and huge rib in it. That one's big, actually probably as big as any in terms of its general hip and pin. Too fragile at the surface, too plain in terms of its chest, starting to get softer in terms of how it fits. We elevate that one and give it some more wow factor. We make a play just from that standpoint. But young man, that one's productive in terms of his body shape and wide constructed. That one fits all the fundamentals really, really well. I got one confused earlier. It worked to your advantage, right? Just be patient. This one actually feeds just a little more tone and touch. It's not as quite as mature in terms of his body shape. I like that quite a bit, and generally has some squareness from behind. Gets a little softer in his pasterns, not quite as athletic when it's set in motion, even though it's more upstanding. She just needs to come with just a shot more woof and power and just real shape to make a play up high. We get into the next couple, we end up having some more just plain featured ones and how it fits. And I'm going to start with this one because this is probably one of the deeper chested ones that isn't as neat and athletic in terms of how it sits. That one's naturally square, it's got some with harder touch, and this is my problem child that I don't know what to go with. Not one to lead for you, is not helping. I don't think that one's naturally as good in terms of how it handles its rear leg. That one isn't as upstanding and wants to ball up on both ends. The problem is this one's highly presented, stout features, stout jawed, love all those things. That one closes up too much in its hock, not as good and big in terms of his turn, and gets too soft. You can make a play in this one in a few different spots, but that's where I just kind of landed in terms of trying to keep these compositionally correct. But the feature, stoutness, presentation, money, young lady, good job. Plainer featured one that just needs to be neater shouldered, deep in terms of its flank line. I love those things. We just need to open them up. Have more upstanding one that needs to be woofed up. It's got some forearm, just doesn't get as big and turned and grooved up in terms of its top line. 3 really athletic ones, especially these 2 that's been well fed, come with a little too much hay belly. This is a compositionally correct one. This one's like the feed bucket, just a shot too much, and that's okay. Really nice one. Young lady's got a big smile, love what you're doing. Just steeper and kind of plain, but really good in terms of flank line and how it fits. Give him a big hand, and we'll go into class whatever number it is.
Coming back from class 5, Ike Howe and Jandy Hawks.
Whether you are buying or selling, you need to know you have someone in your corner who can help you get through that process. The realtors at Coldwell Banker are there to help you get into your home, whether it's a starter or your forever.
Ellie Scott, Josh Jensen, Claire Schaefer, Maddie Grover, Jackson Euler, and Dominic Cephalo. If we can get those that were first and second in class 4 and 5 to come back for the middleweight division drive.
We again would like to thank our sponsors for our Market Goat Show, Mark and Shawnee Mackey, Randy Smith, Howe's Homegrown, Tartar, and Logan IFA. Thank you so much. Please give them a round of applause.
Well, in case you haven't figured out now by now, I do like extras a lot, but I love basics, and that's what this one does really, really well. This one doesn't just gravitate you, grab onto you in terms of being a really elevated, cocky, arrogant, fronted one right out of the gate, but then you step back and study him. And study him as an individual, and that is a square-chested, heavy-structured, burly-featured one that's round in terms of its rib. That's actually probably one of the best ones we've looked at tonight in regards to how that one's shaped to its twist and stifle fits and still feeds progressive out of its back, and everything just goes in motion with a lot of athletic, natural ease when we set it out. That's just a really nice complete goat. As we start talking to the next couple, I think there's a little give and take, and we start maybe don't have some of the extras. This one sits back, and part of it is you do a good job of presenting this one, but that one's actually comes with added length of body, length of hip. All that helps that one set better in terms of its sternum, better in terms of how it fits right behind its shoulder, not only in terms of rib shape, but more progressive width down its top. I just think that's a nice, trim, compositionally good one that fits together really, really nice in terms of how it balances. This one sits maybe just a little neater in terms of length of front, maybe smoother out of the point of its shoulder. That smoothness is also a consequence of the fact that it's a little softer heighted, one that isn't as good in terms of its full rib, and that one doesn't have the same length out of its hip and its density at the ground, and that's why it stands 3. This one comes into the forehole, actually probably just a shot bigger out of its shoulder. That one's got some forearm shape, probably naturally wider gauged in terms of how it sits underneath with a neater jawline. Problem is that one gets a little too coarse in terms of how it handles its rear leg, too steep, sharp out of its hock, soft in its pastern. I want to go ahead and tie that one together just a little better off its rear third. Nice job presenting this one as well. Just gets too plain and generic. That one's got some twist shape in them. That one's got some squareness behind its shape. They're behind its shoulder, not as open in terms of its rib, deeper in terms of how the base of its blade sits in them as well, and still fits with a nice just kind of look, but he also gets just a little looser heighted, a little more throaty in how he fits. Really elegant one that fits in the next spot that rises too much in terms of his frank line, soft in terms of how it fits out of his backside of its shoulder, not as good in terms of raw turn. Harder made one that's just too coarse and it gets a little looser top, but young lady, that one's got a huge forearm in it, and that one's got a good chest and a good pin shape. We just need to tie them together just a little more seamlessly. Big-legged one that sits into this hot gets too weak behind his shoulder, and it gets just too coarse in her how he fits. Next couple, elevated one that's too skinny pin, and the ones that are just really, really sound, really good, productive bodied. They're just not wolfy enough in how they generally come together in terms of power. Give them a big hand as they head back into the barn.
Coming back from Class 6, first place, Claire Schaefer. Second, Maddie Grover.
Let Trudy Hatch and Shannon Johnson help you get into the home of your dreams. They're your local experts for all your mortgage needs. Give them a call today.
Rigby Chiropractic, promoting health and wellness locally with a personal touch.
7 started to line up.
So we come back for division. I'm happy with what's out here, and they still mirror kind of what I said they were in class. Here's one that's naturally correct in terms of body. That's actually probably one of the best ones in terms of how that one stays lean but still turned and hydrated under the edge of its loin. And that one's got some natural width. Does that one tie together as cool? Probably not. He gets a little loose in terms of how he stops at the base of his point of his shoulder, doesn't tie as strong behind his shoulder as well, but that one's very fundamental and sound and loose. Looks best when in motion, to be quite honest with you. The good looking one stands with a young man with my mullet hair, right? That one is really, really stout at the base of his jaw and still youthful in how it fits, neat in terms of his chest. That one's progressive or width is actually very, very good, and I love that one in terms of just being in motion and athletic. When you step back and make some comparisons out here, I think that one's got plenty of muscle. I want to make that clear. I do think the ones on either side of them, especially behind, probably has more twist and outer stifle, maybe just a little naturally put together. But I love that one in terms of feel right now, too, and I want to emphasize that to you and the folks putting that one together. I think that one fits together really nice. Maybe like to drop her in terms of her underline, but I love the natural feel on that one. This one probably gets just a shot full in terms of where he fits right now. If we could just kind of pull off some of his belly, I think it would help him quite a bit. A little looser hider in how he fits, but we talked about looking at this one as an individual. That's a square-chested, big forearm, round-ribbed one that's bigger in terms of its natural shape of his loin and hip. That's the big stifled, big-legged one that just doesn't have quite as arrogant of a look. But you set that one in motion, and it becomes very apparent the angles, the joints, everything fit with an extra burly, dense feature that fits into it as well. With that being said, that's be your champion division.
The grand champion of our middleweight division is Claire Schaefer. Reserve champion of the middleweight division is Ike Howe. Briley Howe, Hallie John, Brooklyn Rhodes, Skylie Montgomery, Brooklyn Flint, Valerie Skidmore, and Sadie Peebley. If we can get class 7 lining up in the steer barn. 8, sorry.
I think we got 4 in here that are pretty nice, and honestly really nice. I want to restate that just have some question marks that kind of leave you some want lists when you go through this one. For me and Parked, I like this one quite a bit. That one's good in terms of being so round in his rib, tying his shoulder square into his base of his chest relative to the one behind it, spreading big from behind. 2 things I'd like to switch. That one isn't quite as long loin. I'm not as concerned about that. I think this one's shaped to its hock and rear leg is fine. With that said, I don't know if that one utilizes the way I want to. He just gets a little timid and hard in how he wants to step down. Now with that said, he still covers his track. He still does it in a way that I think is more than functional and fine, but ideally I want him to just be more fluid in how he sits out of his rear leg. I do think the lemon head standing 2 does that a little better, and you can study this one from the outside and see the added length of hip, the added set to that one's hock, and maybe more cushion and spring when it gets down to its pastern. The problem is, and I do think this one's length of hind saddle's better, specifically out of its loin. The problem is 2 sides. I don't think this one connects as well. And when we start talking about the front, as square chested and round ribbed as that one is, he wants to work his base of his shoulder off of his chest floor just that much relative to the class winner. You get him behind him, he doesn't spread to the same pin width and mass up high through his natural skeleton. I need it to tie better in how it fits. If he does that, he probably wins this without any question. The problem is he doesn't, and so it doesn't fit together. You make your call on the outside. That's how I like him in terms of balance point. Young ladies, whether standing next is actually one that's got some elevations, got some length. This one isn't as neat in terms of the base of its sternum, but honestly, even though this is a sound one that's trim and compositionally correct, he got out-wolfed is what it boils down to. Then you got in a gunfight with 2 hammers, and you came with a 22, and that just kind of the way it worked out for you today. Honestly, from a composition and muscle standpoint, I like this one in the 3 spot. This one's got a really good turn coming down the backside of his shoulder. That one's bigger chested, bigger arm. That one doesn't tie together as nice. That one gets steeper out of his hip, wants to work his top, and doesn't come with the same athletic step. That one's still got a lot of muscle, so that's why it stays 3rd. But that specific piece, and when you get that one propped up, his head is really comes through out of the top of his shoulder. We just need to reorganize his rear leg, and then he probably gets into a hammer fight with the other 2 at the top side of this. As we start working down plainer set goats, it just doesn't have quite as exotic shape and muscle. This is probably one that just gets the next best in terms of being wide pin, naturally good in terms of how it transitions from end to end, just needs to be more elevated in the center. This one I've got just probably a little high on in one specific spot, and that's right here. That one's actually really good when you get right on top of him from my view in terms of staying square and spreading out to the edge of his loin. Now you get back off of it, I think that there's some other goats behind it that's better in terms of its body, probably just a little more fluid in terms of its lower joints, but that one's got some upstanding presence from the side, and then it's got squareness of shape and is lean, and that's why it stands in the next spot. Wider constructed bolder rib, probably for the next 3 than the one that just walks out. Just gets a little more generic in terms of how frailer featured, stout featured one that gets too hollow in terms of the edge and hydration where he fits, and gets a little just generic in terms of his look. One that gets really big in terms of the leg, but starting to get soft and chubby and how it fits as well. Then that turns into the conversation for the next one, just steeper hipped, softer pasture, but young man, that one's really, really productive. Or young lady, I'm sorry, I'm not even looking at the people in front of me. I apologize. That one fits together, just needs to be better in terms of a skeleton. Next 3, really good skeleton, really highly presented, cool looking. They're just too soft and need more muscle, right? It's still a muscle conversation for a terminal project. They're kind of on the average side of things. Give them a big hand as they head back out of the barn.
Coming back from Class 7, first place, Skylar Montgomery. Second, Briley Howe.
There's a lot to know when it comes to buying insurance. That's why it's important to have an independent agent looking out for you and your family. Whatever you're looking to protect, Advanced Insurance Services can help. Let Sherry Pally help make sure you have the right coverage and are getting all the discounts you deserve. She can shop several carriers to find the company that is right for you. Call for a free insurance review today.
Larson, Kimmy King, Paley Thompson, Maddie Leake, Haven Rhodes, Chloe Cook, Jackson Searle, and Cooper Branch. If we can get class 9 to start lining up in the show barn.
I think the young lady's wether is the one that actually comes together not only with a quality look and skeleton, but actually this is the one that spreads with some youthful body shape and behind its forerib, one that actually spreads into its hip and has some leg shape. This is kind of the complete one, as we talked about before, probably one of the better ones in terms of elevation. Not as stout featured, not as unique in terms of some power and body shape. Gets just a little throaty relative to some other decisions, but I think that's a very nice quality wether that's just very, very complete. As we get to the next two, this is probably the one that's not quite as good looking relative to the one standing behind it. Wants to tie just a little deeper in terms of the base of its shoulder and how it fits. But this one, you step back and study, this one is wider constructed. That one's better in terms of where it sits at the base of its jaw, heavier structured. And when that one goes away, not only is it bigger in its back and rounder in its rib, that one's truer from hock to ground. And that's why it stands in this spot. From the side, this is where the one I like a little better. More elevated in how it sits out of its shoulder, more perpendicular. You do a good job with that. And I like the shape to that one's rear leg. Looks more like a goat with length, but athleticism, how it fits. Even though that one's seamless from end to end, when I step in behind him and watch it go away, he's not as opened up in his pin, but then when I truly watch that one in motion, he of the top four might be one of the narrower tracking ones. I want to open that one up in terms of his general skeleton, especially underneath, and that'll turn into a different conversation. This one is wider. This one is stouter, without question, to the one in front of it. This one's coarser in how it fits and doesn't come together with the same quality skeleton and look. That one's deeper in terms of its sternum, deeper off of its end, frailer in feature too. You change all those things, and that one's just a little softer, but I like that one from right here. Pin width, hip width, shape, spread. That one does things very well. We just want to change the skeleton and tone them up in terms of touch. Next one is a little toner touch. That one does have some spread. This one doesn't sit as quite as good in terms of a general skeleton. Steeper and more compressed off both ends, deeper in terms of where it fits, not as athletic in terms of its rear leg. Love that one's forearm. Love that one in terms of jaw, but just starting to get just a shot mature and didn't come together. This is one that when he first walks in, I say, okay, here's some body shape, here's some forearm. Problem is I step in right behind him, he's all body. He needs to come with some more shape, and right behind his shoulder, he just gets a little round instead of upstanding. He's plain, and he comes with too much fill. We get too closed up underneath. We just need to open that guy up a lot. Next one actually is better compositionally, and I struggled where I necessarily want to go. I like this one a great deal. Right behind his shoulder and how he spreads, the length of his top line fits really well. That one just gets a little too mature and plain in terms of his look. That one doesn't have the same stoutness of feature, but I like that one from a composition standpoint. Just needs to kind of come with a little more balance points. Really neat jawed one coming into the next spot, but that actually works in their disadvantage because that wether doesn't have enough power to go with it. Refinement's great, but refinement without density gets in trouble. A really good looking, upstanding one. Too skinny pin, too narrow in terms of the general construction. But young lady, that one's good looking from the side. Don't ever forget that. The really productive ones in the next three spots. This one's the more upstanding one that spreads. I like this one in terms of look. It's too soft in where it fits, but that one's really comfortable. Really heavy structured one for a young lady that's some shape coming behind his shoulder. That one's too soft, pasturing and round. Two really nice ones in terms of production, really good in terms of being efficient and getting here. They just need wolfed up quite a bit and better in terms of how that one fits in his rear leg.
Coming back from Class 8, first place, Haven Rhodes. Second, McCall Mackey.
Roach Ranches supports the people that support them and the fantastic youth of the Valley. Thank you for over 60 years in business, quality seed stocking, gravel, and hunting.
Tree, Ashton Meyer, Emmy Searle, and Daisy Tree. If we can get those coming back for the heavyweight division drive in the show barn.
We're a big class of heavies, and as we start getting them to this maturity point, they're just starting to look like heavyweights are supposed to, right? A little bigger, a little taller, a little longer. And when you start going through them at this weight of maturity, muscle and shape, they've all got variations of it. And we'll talk about some spots and highlights of that when we go down through here. This turns into more how they come together. In my mind, the one that comes in here with this caped weather is the one that fits together the best in terms of being bold, wide, constructed, biggest out of its rack, and spread down its top. That's a wide pin one that still goes with some elevation and proportion. That's why this one wins and does so in a very logical manner in my mind. The next two will go back and forth on the young lady that's going to stay in the second spot. I think this one collects its top line better. Sits better in terms of being naturally up out of the top side of its shoulder. Sits more fresh in terms of its general touch. Now, with that said, I want to strengthen it in its pasterns. I want to go ahead and just maybe give it a shot more spread and turn down its back. That's where I think the red weather does it better. That one's actually kind of surprising when you get right on top of them and you watch the freshness of the touch and how that one sits with some turn coming down its top and bigger pin. I just don't know if that one collects its top line quite as nice as the one in front of it. It's back and forth, lugging the moderation and where this one fits. You do a great job positioning that one, and that helps it a bunch. You go ahead and get him loose, and now he starts getting a little deeper chest in how he fits. But young lady, if you just kept them together, you won in the 2 spot. Not you keep them together. If he did it naturally, he's 2 spot. From there, it turns into a conversation. Young man's weather comes in is more upstanding. The one that's actually better in terms of the shape of his chest and how he sets into his underline than the weather that sets out of the ring, and I've got no argument in that. I just think he gets softer in terms of his posture and not as wide and square and thrown in terms of his touch up high. That turns into the spot that I want to go ahead and pick him up in those categories, but that's a nice weather nonetheless. Plainer made one standing into the 5 spot. It's also still fresh. He's just deeper in terms of his chest. He's not as good in terms of his height. That one doesn't fit quite as youthful in how he looks. I just need to go ahead and pull them together quite a bit. Weather comes into the 6th spot. Honestly breaks my heart because when he comes in, he actually caught my attention pretty quick. He looks youthful because he's got a more refined neck and skull in him, and I got no argument in that. He's actually very athletic when you set in motion in terms of natural presentation. When I touch him, he doesn't have enough shape. This is one of the highlight features where I go through. I was like, man, I got one that's on the top side, and I get right here, and I put his hands on him, and then all of a sudden he falls out of bed. That's the conversation. I still need him to keep him compositionally correct. Even at this, you look at him right now, the widest part of him is midrib. He looks more like a Pepsi bottle than a Coke. We need to change gears. Trimmer made one standing in the next spot that is elevated and really big, a late maturing one with a ton of performance. He's deeper in his chest, but honestly, as he's gone up, he's forgot to go out. He's narrower pinned and everything else. He gets flatter in terms of his general leg. I just need to open this guy up. The other flip side of that is one that's more modest and honestly is wider constructed than the young ladies. I just think he gets too generic. He's honestly got an interesting shape to his chest. He's just more mature and sits lower in terms of how he ties. I just want to go ahead and make him more upstanding and toner in terms of his touch. One that's stouter than where he fits right now. Again, the rounder, soft pasture one that's too frail featured. And then we've got one that's very interesting. And honestly, I'm going to start at a kind of an odd spot. I think this one's funny-headed. And I mean that from a standpoint that he's really, really stout. That weather's got a huge skull in him, but he's also very short in terms of being smushed-faced. And because of that, he's getting thicker necked and more mature. I think his time was a little while ago, but he's got muscle. He just gets too coarse and laid and doesn't have enough natural width underneath to make a play up high. A couple that are too full and is going into the next spot. This one's square behind its back, just gets softer in how it fits. This one's better in terms of being better in its level or out of its hip. Too deep in its chest and not wide enough, but really, really well presented and fed. One that's toner but too bow-legged, and honestly gets a little fragile in terms of underneath, but he's actually better in terms of the shape of his twist relative to the two weathers in front of him. And that's a really good loose-hided one that's awesome colored and presented. He's honestly been fed really well. We just need to add more muscle.
Coming back from Class 9, first place, Kate Schaefer. Second, Emmy Howe. And Emmy Howe. If we can get the champions from the light and middleweight divisions in the show barn.
Three nice wethers out here for our heavyweight division, and honestly, they come in some different flavors, and that's okay. We found the ones that I thought were the best in that class, but that doesn't mean great ones always match, right? I'm going to go ahead and reference the argument of the current state. LeBron James and Michael Jordan are different creatures, but both are freaks in terms of what they do, right? And that turns into kind of the conversation here. When we start talking about the one out of Class 7, I think we talked about earlier, that one fits better in terms of freshness right now, and it fits because of where he fits in terms of weight. That's the biggest one out of the backside of his shoulder that still transitions good in terms of being squared, round in terms of his full rib. I like that quite a bit. As we said before, that one's just a little timid and tight in how he sits out of his rear leg. I wish he would go just a little more athletic and have a little looser range of motion from there, but that one props up good and fits, and that's picking on something that honestly isn't an out of bounds feature at this point in time, but man, that's a wish list that I want. This one is sounder, and this one is toned and fresh to touch, but that one doesn't come with the same unique features. Relative to the two on either side, that one's not as neat and elevated in terms of his chest, not as bold and wide in terms of forehead and his spread, but that one's presented awesome, and you got that one set up and hydrated and touched right and fit really good. He just got two more unique creatures on both sides. The one that I like the best in terms of skeleton out here and proportions from the side is actually out of our heavyweights. That one sits neater in terms of the angle of the shoulder, how that one's sternum sits in him in terms of where it fits in his underlines better and his flank line. That one operates the best out of its rear leg. The question becomes in my mind, he's just not quite at a tone and touch spot that maybe he's a little past 12 o'clock. He's honestly probably maybe the third in regards to shape and spread coming out of the backside of his shoulder and turn and hydration from there back. He's honestly, when you get in front of him relative to a couple others out here, even though his chest fits in him right, is not as round in terms of his full rib. He's not as opened up collectively. He's good, he's square, he's right. He just doesn't come with the same right market animal touch right now, but that guy honestly fits together great in terms of proportions, great in terms of skeleton. I just want to make him fresher is the biggest conversation. You make your call on the outside as a balance in terms of being right in terms of their skeleton and where they fit in terms of being toned and market freshness. In my mind, the one that balances the best is out of Class 7. You'll be your champion division. That brings in a similar interesting conversation with the lemon head behind it. We talked about this one before, that maybe we want to tie it a little better in terms of its point of shoulder and base of its chest. That one's better than your division champion out of its rear leg, but maybe doesn't spread quite as like the same direction out there. Fresher, toner touch one better in terms of his body weight, body shape. Honestly, the big conversation between these two is I'd like to tone this one up better and tie its chest together just a little better and put that feature, but that's a good hydrated sound one that fits. You'll be 2.
Grand champion of our heavyweight division was Skylee Montgomery. Reserve champion of the heavyweight division was Briley Howe.
Amy Rupp with England Volkers grew up in Cache Valley, now lives in Box Elder County and can't imagine calling anywhere else home. The people, places, and gorgeous open landscapes serve as her constant inspiration. Amy serves Box Elder and Cache County in residential sales with knowledge and expertise in large acreage and ranch listings. If experience is what you're looking for, look no further than Amy Rupp. Amy is a proud supporter of the Box Elder County Livestock Auction.
R&B Livestock Solutions has you covered for custom fencing, grazing, and livestock transportation. Give Rhett Munns a call today.
We would like again to give our sponsors a round of applause. Doug and Susie Lish, Kate Schaefer, Claire Schaefer, Schaefer Goat Ranch, Matt and Melissa Branch, Cody Roach, Katie Scott, Claudia Harmon Properties, Jeanette Skidmore, Joe and Janice Summers, Cody and Tara Rhodes, Mark and Shawnee Mackey, Randy Smith, House Homegrown, Tartar, and Logan IFA. Please give everyone a round of applause for helping make this market show so great. Also, please, we're so grateful that Mallory was able to come up today, and if you could give her a round of applause, that would be fantastic. She does so awesome for us, and we love her photography, and please visit her website for any of your photo needs.
Well, I've been thinking about this because where I'm going to be here and you're going to hear me run my mouth more than anybody wants to this week. How's going to handle each species kind of having their moment. And I guess I want to go ahead and take a moment and first off, tell all these kids back here one big thing, and really more the families. This is your county fair week. And there's a conversation in some circles today, what is the value of a county fair in today's age as these kids start spreading around more, showing more, and things evolve, right, with time. I'm here to tell you a county fair is imperative for more than one reason. One, some kids come and this is where they show. Maybe they don't have the resources or opportunity. I was one of those kids. I did not have the people around me. We did not have the finances. We did not have the ability to show much beyond the local level, and that's fine. But I can change things, and you can grow and do what you want. The second thing is obviously education to the general community. This is a little bit different in terms of a disconnect from ag in this region to the general public than where I currently reside. But the other thing that I think where I really want to hit home is the county fair is a sense of community. This is supposed to be a time where you're supposed to battle each other in the ring for bragging rights for the year and see who worked harder in the barn and had luck fall their way and stack the deck to their advantage so luck would fall their way. I'm all in on that. Be competitive. Be, I don't want to say ruthless, but come after it. Show me you're here to play. But in the same breath, this is also the week that you should spend time with friends. Families should communicate and network and enjoy some time together with loved ones, working together in your circle as a family and families, and also be able to make friendships that you enjoy and some memories for the rest of your life. You guys get 10 years of a county fair. That's it. And then you turn old like me. And some of the best memories I had were in the summers, not necessarily showing. And I was the kid that worked too hard during the week and didn't spend enough time in the barns. But the water fights and the wash racks, the card playing in the back in the campers, whatever the case may be. Take advantage of the time with family, take advantage of the time with friends, and being a kid, because once you grow up, it only gets harder. So remember that once everything's been done and settled with the goat show, go work on other species, but then go congratulate your friends. And after you have your moment of either joy or frustration in the barn, come back and enjoy the rest of the week. Now let's get into the task at hand, because I've got a lot of different conversations to have through the week as well. I like all three. I said before, in every division there are different flavors, and that's still the case. We start talking about the lightweight division. I think this dude is really unique. That's actually the squarest chested, most neat in terms of his breastplate, most elevated in terms of how he fits and moves out of his front end. He's honestly the most shapely out of the backside of his shoulder, with the most naturally round rib and turn. I'd like to go ahead and extend and level him his hip. He's not just pushing, he is like that, but that's a big-legged one. He's just youthful and nice in how he fits. The weather out of Division 2. This is the big-bodied one. He's come off just a little bit in terms of fill. That's helping him a little bit. He is better in terms of his flank line than the Division 1 champion. And I like how that guy moves and handles himself. We said before, he's good in terms of his chest. He's big in terms of his twist. He's just a little plain and not quite as unique in his front end. You get him out here to the weathers on either side of him. That one isn't as rounded as rib and waist. Right, that one isn't as big and shapely right behind his shoulder. I don't know if he's got quite the same turn over his edge. I love his twist. He's probably my favorite there in terms of where he fits, but he just gets just a little plain and a little big body. The one out of our heavyweight division, we picked on him just a minute ago. Where he's good, he's cool, he's big backed, he's round ribbed, he's neat out of his chest. He needs to hinge better out of his rear leg. He needs to be longer in how he fits. I'm a believer that there needs to be some mirror in terms of market weight within a realm of acceptability, and quality needs to win out. The nice thing on these goats is honestly, if we start talking about real world commodity markets, it's ethnic trade, and they can be a lot of different weights, and the lighter ones kind of fit. I'm not necessarily one to go for the lightweight automatically, but that's the best one, and that one's going to be your champion. Congratulations. One becomes behind it is a nice one as well, and we talked about that one in terms of elevation, but just gets a little coarse and plain relative to the division, and still stands soon out here. The one that fits together in terms of proportion, skeleton, natural width for me is Division 2. Congratulations, you're reserved.
Congratulations to our grand champion overall, Piper Stokes, and congratulations to our reserve overall, Claire Schaefer. Thank you to all of our exhibitors who participated this year, and for those who came out and supported us. Be sure to check out Mallory's photos at westworthphotography.com.
Kent's is your one-stop shop for fresh produce, bakery items, deli, and meat. Stop by today for fast, friendly service.
Rudd Funeral Home is a locally owned, family-operated business. Joe Rudd and his family, as well as their devoted staff, are committed to providing you with the best service possible during a difficult time. Their beautiful facilities have all the necessary amenities. A large viewing room can also double as a smaller, more intimate funeral chapel. The chapel is even equipped with streaming capabilities to make sure family and friends are connected no matter how far they may be. Rudd Funeral Home is there to help you in your time of need. Schaefer Farms. We grow family, friends, and high-quality crops. Swing by the Fielding location and pick up some delicious homegrown food today. Miller Medical is ready to care for clients with full services for family medical. They also offer beauty and spa health treatments with hot stone and IV vitamin therapies, as well as Botox. Let Miller Medical take care of all your healthcare needs.
Rupp Trucking Excavating is a family-owned and operated construction business specializing in site prep and site utilities. Brothers Blaine and Brent Rupp have spent the last 45 years priding themselves on a project well done. What began small has turned into a company of over 70 employees performing contracts up to $20 million and includes work such as demolition, sewer and water installation, earthwork, septic systems, and waste containers. Rupp's operates several gravel pits and offers both delivery and pickup. Contact Rupp's for your construction needs.
Central Milling Company is a proud supporter of the Box Elder County Fair. Select the best products for your family by using Central Milling Company. Tree Mountain City, creating a safe and welcoming community where neighbors feel connected to each other and enjoy life.
Representing the finest properties in the area. You're thinking of Farmhouse Realty. From farms and ranches to first homes to second homes and everything in between. My mission is helping you pursue a new home or a new property. As a local farmer myself, I'm no stranger to tightening up my bootstraps, dirtying my hands, and getting down to work for my clients. Exceeding your expectations isn't the exception, it's our standard. From first homes to farms and every acre in between, let Farmhouse Realty Group get to work for you.
If you are in need of financial assistance, call Dusty Roach at Lincoln Financial. He and his friendly staff have the expertise you'll need.
Whether you are purchasing a car, buying a home, managing an investment property, starting a small business, or leaving behind a legacy, American Family Insurance will help you protect your dream.